The standby switch is on, and you can see here, if you look close, that little light in there. And so that's these heater elements that come on when you turn on the standby switch, and they start heating up the components that are inside all of your tubes. If you can see the lights on those, just about. They need to be warm in order to function, is the basic deal here. And so if you use the standby switch, it will warm them up. It takes about a minute or two, depending on your amplifier, to get warm enough that it will work. And then you flick on the run or play switch, whichever way they have it marked, and then you'll have sound come out. If you don't use the standby switch, what people say is that it will damage your tubes, and there's some truth to that. If you turn the amplifier straight on and you start playing loud immediately, the risk can be what's called cathode stripping. And so that's one of the parts in your tube there. When you turn it on and it warms up, it generates an electrical field around it, which is an area of plentiful electrons that are allowed to flow from one side of the tube to the other. And so when you run your high voltage power through it by turning on to play, those electrons are allowed to move from the cathode to the anode, and everybody's happy. If you turn it on immediately and start playing heavy, the idea is that field of electrons hasn't had time to form, and it'll end up taking material from the cathode itself in order to achieve that flow of electrons. The reality is on these amplifiers, this amplifier runs about 700 volts, I think, ultimately, which is just, it's a big deal for us, but compared to, let's say, a 1950s US military radar station, that's nothing. And so the idea of having one of these amplifiers, even though it's sort of a biggish one, suffering from cathode stripping, it's probably just not going to happen. Another aspect of using the standby switch is leaving it on too long. And so people often refer to the standby switch as the beer button, to turn your amplifier on to standby and go take a break, have a beer, whatever your thing is, and then when you come back, you turn your amplifier on to play, and the sound will come on immediately. And so the downside to that from a technical point of view is a thing called cathode poisoning. And so imagine we have that cloud of electrons that are hanging out around our cathode, and so if you don't run high voltage through the tubes, which happens when you turn to the play function, they can cause a reaction with the cathode, and you'll end up getting a layer of barium orthosilicate on your electrical components. And that's not rust, but you could imagine it being like a layer of rust. If you have a battery with a rusty terminal, it's going to impede the flow of electrons and make it not work so well. And so if you do get this layer of barium orthosilicate, it can reduce the efficiency of your tube and ultimately lead to an early death. But the same point as with the cathode stripping or cathode sputtering, on these amplifiers it's just not that big of a thing. There's just not enough power going on, and generally the times that people are running them without having the play button turned on, it's not significant enough for that to really make a difference. Here we are on the front of the amplifier. I'm going to break one of the rules here and just go straight to play. I'm strumming a guitar here, and you'll see it just takes a few seconds really to start coming on.
Sorry.
And that's it. So really no harm done there. If you turned it on to the most distorted channel and maxed everything out, maybe you're going to get some cathode stripping, but in general not a big deal. So what should you use it for? Well, the way that I do it, and the way that it seems to be recommended, is when you get your amplifier set up and you're close to being ready, turn your power on and let those tubes warm up the way they like it. And then a minute or two later, go ahead and turn it to play and do your thing. And then when you're done playing, do turn it to standby. The reason for that is that those tubes get super hot, especially the power tubes. And when they get hot, the metal within them gets kind of soft. it can make them fragile. And so turn it to standby. That will let them cool down to that warm-up temperature. Leave it there for a little bit, you know, 5-10 minutes, something like that, and then turn it off. And then leave it there for as long as you can. Put your guitar away, put all your other stuff away, and then leave this last to put into your truck or car or whatever you're doing, so that the vibration from that travel is not going to damage soft, vulnerable tubes. So that's it. So I wouldn't recommend leaving it on the whole time. There's just no real need. If you're taking a break for 10 or 15 minutes, turn it off. That's it. I had some friends here that heard me making this video, and they had a question about what about amplifiers, tube amps, that don't have a standby switch. So Peavey doesn't do that, and also I noticed the new Blackstar combo tube amps don't have a standby switch. So those amplifiers use, there's different ways of doing it, but a common thing would be a current inrush limiter, and that would be like an electronic version of a standby switch. So there's electronics that when you turn on that main power switch, it limits for a little bit of time how much power you can put through that amplifier until the tubes have had a chance to warm up. And then when you turn off that one power switch, it's the same as just killing both of those at the same time. That's it, current inrush limiters. Very exciting. One of the aspects for why amplifiers have both switches is, it reminds me when I turn on my rig, because I'm running stereo, so I've got 2 sets of these to turn on and all the other gadgets. That scene at the beginning of Back to the Future, where Marty McFly is firing up that huge amplifier. And so there is a cool aspect to this. People expect that if you buy a tube amplifier that you have this standby switch. Anyway, enjoy.